We are starting with Alhaji Muhammadu Bawumia. Why you started with Bill Clinton? Okay, so to show us, this we were talking about you beginning to lead us into the primary contest. It's kind of started early. I mean, post-2020 elections, it's been the quickest way in which the next election is being talked about soon after the elections have occurred. But nonetheless, we are here now. So how would you put Dr. Bawumia's appearance and performance in the context of the contest in the NPP?
Okay. So, you know...
Can you change this to Dr. Bawumia for us, please?
You know, as they say, the next election starts the day after the previous one ends. And so, whilst the business of governance is going on, we should be able to walk and chew gum at the same time. So, yes, the development of the country is going on, the governance is going on. But, you know, when it comes to politics, a lot of things take a long time. And the maxim is that the next election is already in motion. The pseudo campaign is already in motion. Now, to your question about where Bawumia stands in the middle of all of this, one of the things that we don't need to lose sight of is the role that Dr. Bawumia has played in terms of the evolving nature of the vice presidency. We are putting this into context, the office of the vice presidency. Since 1992, what we have been accustomed to is a vice presidential role which has mostly been very modest, very moderate, very limited, a very ceremonial and traditional form of a vice president.
And very covert in his activity.
Exactly, very covert. Now, when you look at what Bawumia has done, he has been a very consequential vice president. He has been very, he's an interventionist vice president, an active vice president. He brings a lot of agility, a lot of perspicacity, a lot of vivacity to the role of the vice president. He's been very active and an advocate on several issues. And so, in terms of the politics of Ghana, the contributions that he has made to the position in reforming that institutional role of the vice presidency should not be taken for granted. Because now we see a vice president who has been given the free will to operate. Paul?
Well, the Mills vice president, they will say, had a much bigger free role to operate, even though we didn't see John Mahama doing the speech activism, policy direction. I think that's really the point. We didn't see John Mahama give a policy speech. We didn't see him do that in the campaign for Mills. We saw him run the campaign sufficiently, but he was not at the forefront of the policy, which is what Dr. Bawumia has completely occupied, being at the forefront of the policy, moving the conversation, in fact, from pre-2016's economy to 2016's trying to resolve the promises, and now moving completely away into what he calls digitalization and digitization. And people are accusing him that you were talking about the currency before. Why have you stopped talking about the currency and talking about something else? In terms of freedom of vice president, John Mahama had it. How do you contrast John Mahama's level of freedom, what he used it for, how he used it, and how Dr. Bawumia has used, I don't know whether I can call it freedom, but in terms of this policy leadership, how do you look at the two?
Yeah, so that's exactly what I was driving at. That rule has evolved over time. Of course, we see it changing during the Mills Mahama time. And John Mahama, he still played that traditional role of a VP that we knew. But
could it be that John Mahama was doing the policy, but he was doing it in cabinet? He was not sharing it with the Ghanaian people. Is it possible?
Precisely what I mean by the traditional role that we've known a VP to play. But then again, one thing about him is that he had been a very major player in Ghana's politics and also been part of the political discourse and the political ecosystem in Ghana. So he was a very visible vice president. But when it comes to being out there, remember, one thing that we should remember when we are looking at the evolutionary role of the VP-ship as well, is that pretty much Bawumia has been a protagonist, a prognosticator, and a huge proponent. He has led the government in terms of being the political actor or leading the political communication. Yes, even within the government. So he is pretty much the face of the administration. And so that's how much it differs. And so when we are looking, eventually when the history of vice president is written within this country, and you want to place his role within the context, that's one thing that we should not lose sight of. So you look at that and then you compare that to where he now stands, like you are saying, within his other candidates.
On the precipice of taking over the leadership of the party.
Yes, you look at that and you see that because of that, it gives him certain advantages. Of course, there are certain disadvantages too, because whatever baggage comes to the Akufo-Addo regime, they're going to associate it with him. But of course, the advantage that he has is that it gives him that visibility. The VP-ship is a training ground, or you are sort of showing your political preparedness to be a president.
Are you making the point you just made, that whatever baggage comes to the Akufo-Addo administration will be stuck on Dr. Bawumia, as opposed to his other contestants?
As opposed to his other
so contestants. That if there's baggage in the Akufo-Addo regime, it's negative for Dr. Bawumia. Right. It may be positive for other people who are ministers of the government, like Alan Chermantin. Where is the psychology coming from, that baggage out of Akufo-Addo is Dr. Bawumia? It's not Owusu Efiakoto, it's not Boakye Jaku, it's not Gate, it's not Alan Chermantin, it's Bawumia. I've heard that. I've heard political scientists talk like that. But where is that psychology coming from? Because they're all members of the NPP and they are cabinet ministers.
Right. I get. So here's the thing. The thing is that although they are ministers, the position of the VP-ship occupies a certain public position. He receives a lot of public attention, and he occupies a more central role in the administration. And so,
is it Dr. Bawumia that has created this himself? Is it the downside of he being a policy leader, a clear and obvious policy? Is that the downside of it, that you have led the policy of this government, you have led the political communication of this government? If in 2023, December 2024, we make an assessment and say, we don't think the Akufo-Addo government has done that well, that is your disadvantage. However, within the party is an advantage for others.
Right.
Is that
No. You see, because Alan Chermantin is a minister, but he is not the leader of government business in the way that Bawumia would be. Efiakoto is, but he is not the face of the party. Bawumia definitely tags along because he's the number 2. And so he occupies a more central role in the determination of government policy. And he has also, framed himself as a leading proponent of and defender of government business. In fact, the introduction of certain major policies is done by him and not the president. And so he becomes the face of the administration. When the history is written, it's going to be Akufo-Addo Bawumia government. It's not going to be Akufo-Addo Chermantin government. And so he's tied, the way in which he's tied to Akufo-Addo is much stronger than, for instance, someone like Chermantin. So that is where that explanation comes
in. So the analysis is could be for the general public. The internal NPP, are they also looking at it like that?
Within the internal dynamics, there will be a lot of things that will be happening. Remember that the incumbent president does have a lot of sway on the delegates, or has a lot of sway on the party.
It didn't show in 2007. Kufuor didn't seem to have that kind of sway over the party when Akufo-Addo came up and won that very slim margin victory.
Right. It also depends on who the opposition candidates are and who are running at that time.
Okay.
Yeah. So within the internal dynamics of the party, there are ethnic cleavages as well. There are religious cleavages as well. And then the delegates and the grassroots are going to be the ones who will be making that determination. So Bawumia needs to make that argument that he's been loyal to the president, he's been loyal to the party, he's been very humble and done whatever has been asked of him. He's served as a leader, and he's been one person who has carried the president's vision in a very strong way. And so he needs to make that argument and there is no other position that prepares you as much for the presidency as the vice presidency. And so he has gone through that and prepared himself to take the reins of power. He can make that argument.
Give me the contrast between Dr. Bawumia today and may he rest in peace, Alhaji Aliyu Mahama of yesterday, within the same contest. So we are in 2021. So take us back to 2006, the year before the contest of that one. And Aliyu Mahama and Dr. Bawumia, what's the difference?
Exactly what I've been trying to say. That you see, Aliyu Mahama was a traditional vice president as we've known him, going out there giving speeches, standing in for the president, being involved in the backroom management, economic management team and all of that, being involved in the policy work behind the scene, and even his persona. You know, the business of governance is run through human agency. They are political institutions, but it is human agency that moves those institutions. And so you look at his persona, a very well-tempered person, but he was not somebody who was combative. He was not somebody who had that aggression. He was not somebody who had that kind of deep-seated ambition. You know, of course, he wanted to be president, but it wasn't as vociferous or as aggressive or as activists. That's the word. An activist vice president, as Bawumia was. And so by the time, he didn't really stamp his authority on the party in the way that Bawumia has. At this point, I mean, he's pretty much the chief political actor of the NPP. The president does not even do a lot of it as much as Bawumia does. So you look at Aliyu Mahama, and that's why Aliyu Mahama stood within the party. And so his stature, that political razzmatazz, the stature, that you build over time, is not the same as we can say of Bawumia right now. Even during the campaign, he took a very, very prominent position in the campaign, and he took the campaign to John Mahama and became the chief defender of the party and played a major role in winning the election. So he can go to the delegates and make that particular argument to them. I don't think that Aliyu Mahama could have done the same argument in terms of being an activist or an interventionist vice president as John Mahama has done. So, I'm sorry, as Dr. Bawumia has done. Yeah. So if you want that comparison, that's where they both stand.
Is it good or bad that Dr. Bawumia's digitalization speech did not include the old big ticket conversations, inflation, money in your pocket, currency against the dollar? His speech did not include these, and the NDC are making a big case out of it. Why didn't he talk about inflation? He said that if the fundamentals are weak, the exchange rates will expose you. He didn't say anything about it. We are now at 6.1 for the cedi against the dollar. Dr. Bawumia didn't say anything. The NPP's argument has always been that the devaluation or the weakness of the cedi to the dollar will not be as dramatic as the NDC are. That's the point they make. Right. And so that's the point they make today, that we took it at what in 2016 and where is it now? Measure the percentage of devaluation, measure the percentage of the weakness of the cedi to what used to be in the Setekpe era. Right. Would you have advised him, if you were his advisor, that at the introduction of the Adom-Otchere speech, he should have dealt with the rate of inflation, the basic reports about the health of the economy, the debt situation of the economy, which were his big tickets conversations before 2016. Right. Should he have done that? Because the NDC, from what I see in the analysis, are not attacking his digitalization speech, because I think that is brilliant. Right. And young people are buying into it. And the kinds of things he's saying is not promises, it is things that have happened. He's talking about the ID card. Right. Is the ID, I have one. We can see the ID card. And he's telling you that the ID card you have in your hand is going to do X, Y, Z. Right. He's talking about Facebook. He's talking about mobile money interoperability. That has happened. He's not talking about something that is going to happen. Right. So the opposition is not really dealing with that. But then they're asking him questions. Why have you shifted the goalpost? You were talking about inflation. You were talking about the debt. And that Adongo has been writing on Twitter. Is it good or bad that he didn't talk about that?
Well, the thing is that political speeches are an important moment of branding for candidates and for politicians. The next thing is also that these speeches are an important opportunity for you to also frame and define the political debates and the political climate. The third purpose of those speeches is also to use that opportunity to address any current problems that the nation is facing, to assuage the nation, to bring people together, to inspire the nation, to heal any divisions that are happening, and also to present a very strong vision for the nation. I think he scored in terms of presenting a very strong vision for the nation, moving us into a digital economy. But when it comes to, for instance, security, which is a major issue at this point, unemployment was big on the national agenda, especially when we saw those long queues when the people were applying for immigration, fire service, and all of that. It brought to fore how deep that problem of unemployment is within the country, and then the fuel prices as well. Yes, issues of increasing fuel prices, which of course then affects transportation fares, that affect prices of food items on the market, and just makes life hard for everybody. And then I guess the last thing is the dollar, the exchange rate. So yes.
Should he have dealt with these?
Absolutely, because otherwise there is a certain disconnect, between what Ghanaians are feeling now and then what he said. Yes, people understand the whole digital thing, and it's a great vision because it definitely addresses some of these problems. And so in a way, the argument that he was making was that when we move through the use of data, through the use of these new digital technologies, we'll be creating a lot more employment, a lot more opportunities, creating more money for people. So yes, he did that in a very indirect way, but of course, like you said, probably at the beginning of the speech, it would have been very important to deal with this front and center. But remember that, I mean, he's also trying to use the moment to brand himself as a candidate. He's a vice president, but then he wants to present himself as this visionary person. And so, yes, people are feeling the pain right now, and one of the things presidents do or candidates do is that they got to empathize with people, they got to connect with people, and they have to address those prevailing situations now, and that's probably what is lacking in the speech.
What about the choice of Ashesi University? It could have been University of Ghana, it could have been University of Science and Technology, it could have been a technical university. The choice of Ashesi.
I think it matched with the purpose and the theme of the speech. Ashesi University is probably the most sought after university now. It's a university which is at the cutting edge of technology and education in Ghana and globally. We've heard what Patrick Ewa, who is a global leader when it comes to education, bringing whatever he learned from the United States and building that liberal arts education culture in Ghana, trying to do that. You know, they have all those honor codes, students write their exams without supervision, very practical. The internship, their products are very top-notch, competing with students all over the world, from New York to anywhere in the world. And that's Ashesi for you. And so Ashesi is a symbolism, it's a representation of what Ghana can really be in the future, where we can be and what we can do. And so for him to make that choice, to go there, matches with his vision of a digitized, transformative future for the country. And so that is the frame. That is the frame, the political brand and the political frame that he's trying to create, that he's trying to present out there. And that he represents the future. He has this big vision. Remember that presidents or candidates, one thing that they need to be able to do is to be able to have a grand vision that they'll be able to argue for and get everybody on board in order to move the country to the next level. From a political point of view, that is the frame that he wants to present to Ghanaians, and it is left to Ghanaians to decide if this is the kind of future that we want to build for ourselves. Of course, if the speeches get too much, people, diminishing returns might set in. And so he really needs to manage that. The other frame or the other theme that is coming out a lot is, and you know the research that we did, is the fact that people are beginning to talk about the fact that there are a lot of promises that are out there, but then they are yet to realize all of them. And so the trust, the believability of the vice president is something that he needs to address. Whether it's true or not, the perception is out there. You know, the hashtag Bawumia lies is something that is really gaining ground. And for me, I think if I were advising him, I think the perception is very important, and that is something that he definitely needs to address, because trust, believability are very important in framing your image as somebody who has integrity and somebody who needs to be trusted to do what he can do. And that's one thing that he definitely needs to address moving forward.
What about the attendance at the event? Big heavy hitters, Chief of Staff, Minister of Finance, Minister of Works and Housing, Minister of Information. We're all present at the event to support him. If you were a candidate in the race, would you look at that and feel abandoned?
Well, I mean, you see, that's the advantage that incumbency presents. I mean, the stature of the office, the fact that it gives you the opportunity to look presidential, you know, so I think it is what it is. That is the advantage that comes with that position, and the other candidates just have to look for other ways of making up for that or shoring up themselves. And there are ways to do that. If you look at Kenya, the vice presidential Ruto, candidate there, is also presenting himself as a candidate, but then he's at odds with Kenyatta.
Yes.
And so
Kenyatta wants Raila.
Yes, exactly.
The opposition leader.
Exactly. But you know, if you look at the strategy that Ruto is using, is a very beautiful strategy. He is trying to separate himself from Kenyatta, and going out there to say that he is the man of the people. He does not belong to that elite class. You know, Kenyatta comes from that political stock. His father, they have always been the bourgeoisie, the powerful, the people with the power. He says, no, I just can't.
Raila comes from that class as well.
Raila also comes from that class. And so Ruto is framing, you know, political framing is very important. You know, he's framing and branding himself as the man of the people, that I don't belong to that class. In fact, I'm not even part of the bubble. I'm here for you, I'm here for the people, and I want to listen, and that is a very good quality of a leader. Listen to the needs of the people and then address that, and that's the strategy that Ruto is adapting. So yeah, the advantages are there as an incumbent, but then the other candidates also have a good opportunity to reframe themselves in a very good way.
Let's see the other candidates. Alan Chamatin is the other big one. We'll have occasion to talk a lot about him because he's a colossal sort of person within the NPP. Usufri Akoto is the one that the president was talking about the other day, Minister for Agric. The Honorable Joe Gate, former Minister for Railway, former Leonard Attorney General. Joe Gate is also in there. Boachi Ejako, former Minister for Energy, is also in there. And, there are a few more, but I think, okay, let's count them because the NPP has a limit of 5. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, there you go, 5. Okay, so maybe the rest are out. Okay.